I'm 76 years old. And for the first time in my life, I'm saying this out loud without trying to soften it or explain it away. I spent most of my life chasing what I thought was success. And now, near the end, I finally see what it cost me. I'm not sick enough to be dying tomorrow. But I'm old enough to know that the road ahead is shorter than the one behind me. That changes how honest you're willing to be. I'm telling this because I don't need applause anymore. I don't need approval. I don't even need forgiveness. I'm telling it because holding it in feels heavier than finally letting it out. Most mornings now are quiet. Too quiet. I wake up before the sun, not because I have somewhere to be, but because my body doesn't sleep like it used to. I sit at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that goes cold more often than not. Sometimes I look at my hands. They look like they belong to someone else. There was a time when these hands were always busy. Signing papers. Shaking hands. Holding a phone to my ear while pacing a room. I thought that meant I mattered. In my 20s I was hungry. Not just for money but for proof. Proof that I wasn't ordinary. Proof that I was doing something with my life. I grew up watching men who worked hard and were respected for it. They were tired but they were proud. That stuck with me. So when opportunities came I said yes. Extra hours. More responsibility. Another promotion. Another move. None of it felt like a mistake at the time. That's important to say. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't cruel. I was doing what made sense. I told myself I was building something. Future. Stability. A life that would eventually slow down and feel full. I believed there would be time later. Time to rest. Time to reconnect. Time to enjoy what I was working so hard for. In my 30s, work stopped being something I did and started being who I was. When people asked how I was, I answered with my job title. When they asked what I'd been up to, I listed achievements. At home, I was present in theory. I was there, but my mind was usually somewhere else. Thinking about deadlines, problems, the next step up. I miss things but never all at once. That's how it happens. You miss a dinner here. A school event there. A conversation you promised to have later. Later always seemed reasonable. I remember my wife once telling me gently that I was always tired even when I was home. I laughed it off. I said that's what providing looks like. She didn't argue. She just nodded. I didn't understand that nod until much later. By my 40s, the reward started coming. The salary was good. People listened when I spoke. My name carried weight in rooms it never used to enter. From the outside, it looked like I'd made it. From the inside, I was constantly bracing for the next thing. The next deal. The next problem. Success doesn't arrive with a bell. Just keeps moving the finish line. I told myself I was doing it for my family. And I was. At least that's what I believed. But there's a difference between providing for people and being with them. I didn't see that difference clearly then. The damage wasn't dramatic. No big fights. No ultimatums. Just erosion. Shared routines faded. Inside jokes stopped updating. I became someone who was informed about my own household rather than involved in it. I'd hear about things after they happened. Bad day. Small victory. I knew the facts but not the feelings. At work I was indispensable. At home I was slowly becoming optional. I didn't notice when that shift happened. That's the cruel part. You don't feel the weight of what you're losing while you're busy winning something else. Then time did what it always does. It moved forward without asking me if I was ready. My children grew into adults with lives I didn't fully understand. My marriage settled into a quiet distance neither of us knew how to close. And I kept telling myself I'd slow down soon. Soon became a habit. Soon became a lie I didn't know I was telling. I was in my late 50s when the first real crack appeared. Nothing cinematic. Just a moment where I realized I wasn't as necessary as I thought. A younger man took over a project I'd led for years. He was sharp, efficient, hungry. People started coming to him first. I told myself it was a relief. That I'd earned the right to step back. But something in me felt unsteady. For the first time, work didn't need me the way it used to. And I didn't know who I was without that need. When the quiet arrived, It didn't come with peace. It came with questions I'd spent decades avoiding. I tried to fill the space the same way I always had. More work, more commitments, more reasons to stay busy. But the invitations slowed. The calls came less often. I was still respected but no longer relied on. That's a hard shift to explain unless you've lived it. You spend years believing your value comes from being needed. Then one day you're simply available. Around that time my wife got sick. Nothing sudden. Nothing dramatic. Just a diagnosis that settled into our lives like bad weather you can't outrun. I went to the appointments. I sat in the waiting rooms. I held her hand. But even then, I realized how out of practice I was at simply being there. I wanted to fix things, schedule things, manage things. She didn't need a manager. She needed a companion. One night, after a long day, she looked at me and said very calmly, "I wish I had known you more when we were younger." She wasn't angry. That's what made it hurt. She passed away 2 years later. After the funeral, the house felt enormous. Not because it was big, but because it was empty in a way I hadn't prepared for. People came by at first. They always do. Then life pulled them back to their own routines. That's when I understood something too late. Work keeps you occupied, but it doesn't keep you company. Had money. I had a comfortable home. I had stories about achievements that no longer felt like mine. What I didn't have were shared mornings. Or someone who knew the sound of my breathing when I slept. Or a reason to hurry home. My children call. They're kind. They're busy. We talk about practical things. Health, weather, plans that may or may not happen. There's love there. But there are gaps that can't be filled with phone calls. I don't blame them. They built their lives the way I taught them to. By watching me. That's a heavy thing to realize. There are nights when I replay moments I didn't think mattered. Conversation I postponed. Birthday I missed. A weekend I worked through because I told myself it was temporary. The regret didn't come from failing. Came from delaying what actually mattered. I kept thinking life would eventually open up. That I'd arrive somewhere and finally feel settled. But life doesn't wait at the finish line. It happens while you're busy aiming for it. At 76, I don't hate my life. I'm grateful for parts of it. Truly. But gratitude doesn't erase loss. Just sits beside it. If you're listening to this and you're younger than I am, I'm not here to warn you or instruct you. I don't believe in telling people what they should do. I only know what I wish I had understood. Success can be useful, can provide comfort and options, but it doesn't remember you when you stop showing up. People do. Presence doesn't feel urgent when you're young. That's why it's easy to trade away. By the time it becomes precious, it's often scarce. I thought I was building a future. What I didn't see was that I was spending the present to pay for it. Now my days are slower. I take walks without destinations. I sit with memories longer than I should. Some of them are warm. Some of them sting. I've learned to live with both. There isn't much time left for reinvention. And that's all right. I'm not trying to be remembered as impressive anymore. I'd settle for being remembered as someone who tried to tell the truth when it finally mattered. If this story stayed with you for a moment, that's enough. If it made you think of someone, maybe reach out to them. As for me, I'll finish my coffee. I'll watch the light move across the room. And I'll keep learning how to sit with what is, instead of what I once chased.